you to the July 2021 Epsilon Sigma Phi Professional Development Webinar. My name is Jeanette Ray Keywood, and I serve as chair of the Professional Development Committee. Would you please take a moment to drop your name and institution in the chat box so we know who we have with us today? Our presentation is Smoking and Grilling Foods by Surine Greenway, Family Consumer Sciences Extension Educator, and Scott Jensen, Livestock Extension Educator with the University of Idaho Extension. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them in the chat box. We will have time at the end of Surine and Scott's presentation to answer your questions. And I also want to make sure that you are aware that we are recording this session. So without further ado, I will turn the time over to our presenters and let them begin. Surine and Scott.
Thank you. So with that, welcome everyone. We appreciate your time today as we talk about our cross-discipline programs, Smoking and Grilling Foods. As we go throughout today, we really hope that you start thinking about your programming area and ways that you could have a collaboration with a colleague, a volunteer, a community partner, and see how we have structured something and how you may be able to replicate this, or maybe even our specific program. And as Jeanette shared, I am a Family Consumer Sciences Extension Educator, and I focus on safety and food preservation, health and nutrition, and basic financial management.
My name is Scott Jensen. I am a livestock educator, do mainly beef, cattle, range, and pasture management work in Idaho, and anyway, don't do very much food stuff, but this has been a fun opportunity to work together on that. So to get started, I just want to take a minute and acknowledge Garth Ruff from Ohio State. To the reason being, when Surine and I were first talking about this program, I had attended a presentation that Garth gave at our National Ag Agents Association meeting. And so following that, I caught Garth in the hallway, and he was more than willing to share some information, and then followed up even after that with sending me a copy of some of his materials, and we visited on the phone a little bit more. And so it helped get a little leg up as we started to plan our own program to borrow a few bits and pieces from work that Garth had done.
Following today's presentation, Scott and I would be willing to do the same if anyone's wanting to reach out. So we do want to share that. As we just want to walk you through what we'll be covering today is we'll really be emphasizing the cross-discipline collaboration that Scott and I have had. As he shared, prior to this partnership, he doesn't have a lot of emphasis on that food preparation component, and I, in contrast, don't have a lot of emphasis on the meat science of my food preparation classes. So we'll be emphasizing some of those pieces. We'll also be talking to you about the program expertise that we're bringing to this specific program, the way that we have structured it, some implementation considerations, both for this program or as you're identifying one that maybe you want to put into action. We will be covering a little bit of startup costs, some of those pros and cons that are really important to weigh, especially up front, and then specific to this Smoking and Grilling Foods program, our next steps. And so just to give you a little bit of this program background.
We started actually, just the idea came as a result of some input that we received from our overall Extension Advisory Committee. We were discussing some needs in the community and the county, and the idea of putting on a program at the time, I guess we titled it Hunt to Home, that was more sort of focused on hunting, and then what to do following the harvest and all of that. And so that's kind of where we got the initial idea. the unfortunate thing was that we structured that and had things together, but it just, we didn't get anybody signing up. And so, that's why it's listed there as a failed program, because as much as we wanted to do it and thought we had a good program together, there just, for whatever reason, there just didn't seem to be the public interest in what we were doing.
So that original piece, Hunt to Home, we can't even remember what exact year that came about, but it was 2016 or 2017. And as we had developed that structure, we were getting pretty excited. We were going to have this collaborative opportunity, and we thought this is going to be great. But unfortunately, just like Scott said, no one signed up. And so fast forward to 2019, and I, in reflecting on that, I approached Scott and really wanted to draw on our personal interests. With Scott, smoking and grilling meats is a personal passion of his, but I too had started getting into smoking foods on a personal level. And I thought, I have a lot of clientele, bringing me questions, food safety concerns, not having any food safety concerns, not knowing the background of that. And so I went to Scott and I said, we should start doing this. And an additional piece for that was not only that personal interest and new passion for me, but was the fact that I traditionally offer a lot of food safety and food preservation workshops. I lead a food preservation volunteer program. So traditionally, my clientele is more female based. And I do struggle to generate interest from male participants. And so in wanting to be more mindful of reaching a wider audience, specifically the male gender, I went to Scott and I said, okay, here you are, Scott, with livestock emphasis with a traditionally male-based participant background. With this partnership, we could be really mutually benefiting our participant base, where Scott brings a lot of male participants to the table in general, and they're not attending my food workshops. And so how can we be structuring it so we're benefiting one another and we're opening up a whole new door to our participants? And so in really emphasizing that male and female participant from the contrasting programs. And with that, we wanted a joining of our interested participants from our different programming areas. And then the next piece, once we started structuring this and conceptualizing what it would look like, again, we had already established that, yep, we want to take Hunt to Home and really pump this out. What can we make it look like, but also be successful? And that is where Scott spoke with Garth Ruff, but then also brought in a personal partnership.
I have a good friend by the name of Sean Clough that he owns a catering business, Grub and Barbecue, and that is strictly what he does for a living. And so Sean has an interest and a passion. He says that he's not much of a teacher, but we have found that he's a great teacher. And so he brings he was interested in working with us on this, and initially definitely brought some equipment to the table, but also brought a lot of his practical knowledge and application to the class. And so he's been a huge addition to our workshop.
Our team. So that first photo on that slide that started this presentation, that was actually a photo that included Scott, myself, and Sean, our third team member, if you will. And with that, this all was brought about in 2019. And so our pilot was offered in November of 2019. It was a one-day workshop in that pilot, and we had 22 participants. And so as we shared with you, we wanted to talk about that cross-discipline collaboration. So you're hopefully aware now that I'm a family and consumer sciences extension educator, and what I'm really emphasizing in this program is food safety. Is that you're handling the meat or other products appropriately when you're in the kitchen. If you're taking it outside of the home for preparation, that you're handling it appropriately throughout that, and that you're storing it appropriately as well. And then Scott is bringing.
I mean, my passion is livestock, and within that, I guess I have a reasonable amount of knowledge and interest in the meat science part of raising livestock and what goes into producing a high quality end product. And so that's the expertise that I think that I brought to the table, is to be able to help teach folks about some of those factors that are going to affect meat quality and ultimately the eating experience in the end. And then, like I mentioned earlier, Sean brought in that aspect, that practical knowledge and application of doing this type of work for a living. And so he just has been a great addition.
Yeah, a lot of participants comment quite frequently on the experiences that are being shared. So Scott, as he talks about his emphasis in that livestock, I'm talking about that food prep. And then as Scott mentioned, Sean is bringing in those experiences with preparing many, many meats or barbecue opportunities. And so people are definitely giving us qualitative feedback that they're noting, oh, you're bringing that passion, that experience, that knowledge. That isn't always something that we can, pull from a handout. So they're definitely commenting on that. And as you're thinking about your personal programming area, we encourage you to be thinking, is there a project, and not just smoking and grilling, that's what we're emphasizing today, but maybe you have identified a project that you would like to develop and you want to know, how am I going to partner with people? Really be thinking about who is your audience. How are you going to structure to meet not only the audience's need, but their interest in that, right? That's why, unfortunately, we've all had that failed program, but we went back to that failed program and we redesigned it entirely into what we would consider successful. And so with that, maybe you're not in smoking and grilling foods, maybe you're in horticulture. How could you be partnering with a colleague, a volunteer, or a community partner to be structuring a successful program in your region that's going to meet what your audience is seeking? As we look at smoking and grilling and the program expertise that we're bringing, as I shared, I'm focusing on that food safety aspect. So thermometer usage is a huge piece that can be lacking when we're talking about individuals checking the doneness of their meat for that internal temperature. And so that's a big piece that I'm really emphasizing in the program throughout all aspects.
And then I focus on helping people understand carcass grading. What do those grades even mean, and why is that important? How does that quality grade affect the ultimate tenderness and palatability of a steak? We spend a lot of time talking about degree of doneness and its influence on palatability, and then even cut selection. Where does it come from on a carcass? Why do some meat cuts require different cooking methods than others, and what are the most appropriate methods to use? And then Sean brings in some, he does some trimming demonstrations, and probably the most popular being, how do you trim a brisket? And we've even had folks come and just videotape that entire process as he's worked through and talked about how to trim a brisket. And then he's been a tremendous help in talking about different seasonings and how to do that, and then added his personal experiences related to cooking recommendations.
And so as we talk about the program structure, I did share with all of you that we did have a pilot. A pilot in 2019 is, it was a great start. It's very different from the workshop that we put on today. So our pilot program was actually structured to be just, it was on a Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon was what the time frame was that we marketed. And with that program, it ended up being from 9 a.m. to a little bit over 1:30 p.m. So we went over by that quite a bit. Did everyone stay? You betcha. Scott will talk about a little bit of what encouraged them to stay, but it really encouraged us to reflect on what are the educational aspects that, we stand firm. We really want this to be included in the workshop. In addition, to what demonstrations, what hands-on, because we wanted to make sure this was not just a lecture or lecture demonstration only program. We really wanted, Scott and I both from day one emphasized that we wanted it to be hands-on. And so with hands-on, it does alter your structure quite a bit just with your capacity, and as well as what can be done with a room full of people. So we now, since that pilot, offer a 2-part workshop. So it's intended to be 2 separate nights. We have structured to be an evening piece, and it is a 6-hour workshop. And so each night is 3 hours. As you can see, this is a flyer, an example of our latest flyer, because even that has changed over the times. And with the cost, as you'll see, $50 a person or $75 a couple, woof, that's quite the cost. But Scott will discuss the pilot program and what that cost initially was.
So cost is something that Surine and I have argued about a lot, because we have, I guess, different experiences and perhaps different philosophy. And I'm more accustomed to some programs that I offer that people are willing to pay. I mean, it's training that really affects their bottom line in a farm or ranch, and so they're willing to pay quite a bit of money to come to those, like an artificial insemination school or a 4-day grazing workshop. And so that's kind of the mindset I came with. And Surine is more, let's just see if we can, sort of cover the costs. And so we've argued back and forth quite a bit. But that first workshop, we only charged $15 for, and then or $25 a couple. And as part of that, they came away, folks, if nothing else, they came away with a pretty good sized chunk of pork loin and an entire tri-tip of their own, not to mention the brisket that we'd cooked and sliced, and they all got to eat. And so it was, let's just say our expenses far exceeded the income for the program. And so that, as we reflected on that and looked at that, then that's kind of led us to where we're at in charging, I guess, from that initial $15 to $50 is a pretty significant increase. But when you look at what the people are getting from the program, I think they have found that it's definitely worth the cost.
And so yes, we have not argued, we've discussed at length. We do have differing philosophies on program participation, having that accessibility. And so with that, yes, we have gone back and forth on our fee, but then with that piece, we've also weighed what we're offering as far as content, the lecture, the demonstration piece, the hands-on, and the sampling piece. So while that cost has increased, we do feel that we have increased, well, not increased, but we've made sure that the program structure reflects the fee that participants are paying. So they're receiving what they're paying for. They're definitely getting that quality level. And with that, we've even had participants who attended our pilot and have come back and attended again. They loved it so much. And so we've had individuals that paid $15 or $25 for 2, came back and paid $50 for an individual and said, yes, this is worth it. And I know I'm getting my worth, and that's why they've returned. So something to consider in your program, because it is hard to go from a very low cost workshop and later reflect and say, whoa, we went in the red majorly versus breaking even or just barely covering those costs and then some. So be thinking of what you're going to be offering, especially as you're piloting your new program or you're smoking and grilling foods, and what you're going to be offering for that fee as well. So for our program structure, as I shared, it is a 2-night. That's how we've done it at this point. Scott and I give up plenty. We all have that 4-H component, but we all, in extension, we know it's sometimes a lot of nights, a lot of weekends, and Scott and I said, okay, enough with those Saturdays. So we've structured it to be 2 evenings during the weekday. And during the very first night, we're starting off with smoking versus grilling, and we are immediately, so as soon as we get started, we get everyone familiar with our location, the facility where we're at, who we are, what we're covering. we are going straight to seasoning. And so we're actually having participants build the seasoning on the very first night, within the first 30 minutes or less. They're already seeing a trimming demonstration with a pork loin. They're receiving their own pork cut, and they are seasoning that piece after they're getting a little quick educational component on seasoning and how can you sample that seasoning before you're putting it on your raw meat. And then they're hitting up, they're going straight to the grill, meaning we've already prepped that grill, got it preheated. And so we have someone managing the grills, we're getting started, and then we're in teaching, and then we're getting them seasoned and straight out there. And then as soon as they're coming back from the grill, letting it rest, they are sampling that first cut that they've had that hands-on experience with. And we're talking about that food safety piece, why they were using a thermometer, why that's important, how that affects different meat cuts, as far as the temperature for that internal piece. And then with that, we're moving right along. We're doing a brisket trimming demonstration on the first evening. And so that's where Sean is really bringing in that demonstration piece. And just as Scott shared, our participants have given major feedback on that. And as he shared, we've had individuals videoing, taking photos, but they're immediately engaged from the get-go because they already got a season, and now they're wanting to know about that next cut, which is a completely different species at this point. To round out the night, we are actually assigning homework. And so that homework is assigned by Scott. He's been touching on the seasoning piece and how important that is. And so as we're sending them away for the night, this homework assignment was something Scott added into this 2-night workshop. I'll let you talk about that.
We did. As we come back for the second night, our focus, at least initially, that second night is on some tri-tip. And so the assignment is to go home and create your own magic seasoning for the tri-tip that you'll learn how to trim and prepare when you come back on that second night. And so it's been really interesting because we get folks just go home and they try a lot of different things, and we've had some really good seasoning mixes come back when folks have come back for that second night. So it's been a chance for them to go home, do a little bit of experimenting on their own, and then come back with something that they think is really good and try it out for the class.
I agree with Scott that people are definitely going home, they're trying it out. And so it's really having them apply different aspects of the workshop immediately. So we're getting that immediate engagement, that tie-in, that commitment from them that they want to come back. They want to then share the seasoning. So we're seeing a lot of that community feel that they now want to share their seasoning with others and have that taste testing on that night too. But they're really wanting to see from instructors as well, what do you think of the seasoning I created? Here's my takeaway. Can I get your feedback on that? So it's really exciting to see that and to see that people really were taking it seriously. And we definitely see that because they're coming back night 2 and they're there before class and they're chatting away, wanting to get going on night 2. And then at the last piece of the first evening, we are focusing on smoked foods, which unfortunately, a lot of times smoked foods take a bit of time because you're infusing a flavor while you are cooking, just as with grilling. But with that, a lot of the smoked foods are more sampled and it's discussed versus smoking live. So we do the brisket trimming demo, but we're sure not smoking that brisket for hours upon end during the class. So they're able to sample some smoked foods and recipes. And then we send them off with that homework and we see them night 2. And then during night 2, that's when a different brisket, since it is a week later, but a different brisket has now been already trimmed, it's been seasoned, and it's been smoked. And so you can see in the photo here, this is actually a picture from a night 1 workshop where Sean is trimming the brisket in front of everyone. So he's showing them the removal of that big piece of fat and discussing why, some people have a philosophy on leaving the fat, some take it off, and he discusses that with participants. And as you can see in this photo, they're standing up, they're fully engaged. They want that we have them, at the edge of their seats listening in. And then For night 2, we're then having a brisket cutting demonstration. So that discussion on where you should be cutting in relation to the different shape of your brisket. And then we're immediately doing samples. So we have people walking in the door telling us all about that seasoning they went home and created. And then as soon as we get started, we're sampling that cooked brisket. And then next piece up is Sean's going into a tri-tip trimming demonstration. Again, it's straight to them using that seasoning. So they're having that hands-on meat preparation. We're again emphasizing the food safety control measures that we should have at home on a regular basis with our surfaces, our food products, with our utensils, all of those components. And then we're hitting up that grill again. We're getting that hands-on, that active participation from our participants. And then when we come back, we've let that meat cut rest. And then we're going straight into some more of the education.
I would just add a couple of things specific on that tri-tip trimming demonstration. We do 2 different things there. And one is that we take, show the participants a comparison between a peeled tri-tip and one that has not been peeled. And if you're not familiar with it, you can purchase a non-peeled tri-tip for often 40, 50, 60 cents a pound, maybe even $1 a pound less than a peeled. And so it seems on the outset, it seems like it's a much better bargain to buy that unpeeled tri-tip, but we weigh the tri-tip and then peel it, trim all the necessary fat and stuff off. Then we weigh the fat and look at, how much did we lose there in the trimming? And what we find is that you're way better off to just go ahead and pay for the peeled than the unpeeled. The second part of that is that participants are given a tri-tip between 2 of them. And so they have to take that one and trim it up themselves and season it before, use that seasoning they brought from home. And then they're going to the grill with it. So there's quite a bit involved there that gets them engaged in that trimming and preparation for the grill.
There's a lot of participants wanting instructors to come around. Is this how, am I peeling it correctly? Is this, or am I trimming my tri-tip correctly? Is this what it needs to look like throughout that entire process? So they really are intent on applying that content that they're learning live in the class. And then when we come back from the grill, after we've let that tri-tip cut rest, they're sampling it. They're encouraged to share with their neighbors safely, but so they can try those different seasonings that they brought back as part of their homework. We've even had volunteers in our last class. A volunteer, a master food safety advisor, was volunteering at the event, assisting with the flow of the program. And she had been there night 1 as a volunteer. She returned as night 2, and she had done the homework of bringing seasoning, and she wanted feedback on that seasoning from the class. So even our volunteers are very engaged in this program. And then when we're coming back and sampling that, Scott, excuse me, is going into.
Anyway, then we spend a little bit more time when we come back on meat science and cut selection and some of the, just kind of the whole USDA inspection side of things versus the quality grading and what each of those things mean. And so we spend a little time helping educate them about why can we have confidence when we purchase beef that's been USDA inspected, and so we educate them a little bit about that.
And then after we're winding down the evening, we are asking that they have complete a program evaluation. We all know how important that is to our programs and the ability to make them better, make sure that they are being effective and meeting the needs of our audience. And then of course, we're ending with food, right? You know, we've spent all this time, we still want to make sure we're finishing with some cutting and some sampling of some pieces with that. And so we've definitely described you a lot of different pieces. And so with that, we really want you to be considering, okay, if it's smoking and grilling, or if it's a different program, what should I be taking into account for actual implementation? So do you have opportunity to partner with a local business, as we have done? Or instead, what is your expertise? What would you be bringing to this program at the forefront? So what content area or what specific program area in your content? What is your capacity? As we've discussed our program, or as you're looking at this grill, for example, we have the capacity to do large scale, but not everyone does, and not initially. So do you have multiple instructors or the potential for multiple instructors to help put on a program? What is your space available? I described our pilot. Our pilot was in our office conference room, and we have never done one in there since because the capacity is very limited. It's just not designed for large bodies to be doing hands-on activities in it. Plus the cleanup piece was a major issue in our conference room with one small sink. So we're renting out spaces for this program. So again, that's being built into the program cost. But with that, the budget that we have available, what time do you have to prep, or what would you need to prep in order to implement your program? And then how much time are you taking to implement the program? All of these factors are some that you should be considering as you're structuring your program or as you're analyzing your program and adapting it to make it more relevant. With that, is there a different program that you could be partnering with? You know, I mentioned we are livestock and FCS, maybe there's horticulture FCS, maybe FCS 4-H. Be thinking of the different ways that you could be looking at even your own colleagues within your county or your location, or neighboring locations. You have someone next door that you could partner with to be providing different programs within your region. So be thinking of that. And maybe you don't have a business partner, maybe you have a community partnership opportunity. Maybe you even have a volunteer opportunity. Sometimes we have those volunteers that have specialties and we don't even consider that they could be a great instructor in implementing a program, especially if it's outside of a traditional focus that they may do. So be considering ways that you could be expanding that. But I definitely encourage you to be considering what your starting budget is, what you have available to you, and what is the impact that you're capable to do with your equipment. Scott's going to talk just a little bit about this photo as far as equipment.
So when we started out, we didn't own much equipment, and so we ended up utilized one of Sean's grills that a Santa Maria style grill that he does, that he uses quite a bit in catering, and borrowed that multiple times, and he was always very gracious to let us use it. But at the same time, I didn't want to, I guess, take advantage of his hospitality too often, and so I sort of started. I kept watching. I just thought, boy, if we could find some kind of a little grill that would work for the class, that'd be great. And this one that's in the picture, I actually found on Facebook Marketplace. And so I used some funds not generated by this program, but some slush funds I had, and we purchased that, and then have used it for the last couple of classes, and it's worked really great for us. But we got a pretty good buy on it, and anyway, it just is one of those things that we didn't have it initially. We found some other ways to do things, and even, I mentioned right off the bat an acknowledgement to Garth Ruff. Garth, in the program that he does, he has a bunch of Weber grills that he takes and does his program with. So it's not like you would need, for this to do a similar workshop, not like you would need some kind of trailer grill, but there are ways to adapt and make things work depending on what your resources are.
And so as Scott was really mentioning those startup costs and him having a slush fund. So yes, we are very lucky that Scott has a completely separate program that does generate quite a bit of revenue for his programming. And so he was gracious enough to really commit those funds up front for us to be purchasing. As he shared, we initially did not have a grill for this specific program. And who wants to bring all their personal items, their personal home items for work? But we considered that for a little while, but we were lucky that Sean committed some pieces. And while he did not charge us a cost, we were able to provide a stipend for him based on all of his generosity. So we were lucky to do that. But our initial conversations with him when we discussed this program, he in no way was requesting funding to be partnering with us and providing his equipment. So we were really lucky initially. I just encourage you, as you're looking at those partnerships, to have a conversation up front. We were super lucky that we did not, and he was on board and excited about this project the same as we were. But we as we started generating some income to pay back costs, we did want to provide that stipend to him. We had a few thermometers from my food safety work, but not enough for as much hands-on that we were doing. So we invested in some thermometers. I had knives, but Scott made it very evident they were not the quality that we desired for trimming and meat cutting. And so we did invest in some knives for this program, as well as heavy duty cutting boards. Again, my equipment just wasn't cutting it for some of these more heavy duty pieces. Kevlar gloves, we were lucky that Scott had some from his livestock programming. We invested in some prep trays. We bought some heavy duty prep trays, some lower cost ones, all that are very necessary, especially as we've had programs with as many as 30 people. So we definitely have a lot of equipment that's necessary. And so those were startup costs. But in addition, you really need to consider your revolving costs. So the meat product. There have been times where Scott has purchased product over a month in advance of our program, knowing that the prices of meat were going to go up. So having a, kind of a thumb on what's the take on, commercial level purchasing of meat. And part of that is, having that professional caterer working with us that knows, okay, we're going to be entering grilling season and meat prices are going to go up. And you purchased some meat just this year, and how much did it go up within a couple days?
It went up within, well, I got word, fortunately through Sean, who really pays attention to those things. I got word from him that weekend the price of tri-tip was going to go up almost $1 a pound, and since then it's gone up a couple dollars a pound. And so we bought a case at the time and then put it in the freezer, and so we were able to save some cost by being aware of what that was going to do and making that purchase ahead of time.
It's important to note that when you're just purchasing individually, $1 a pound isn't the biggest in the world, but when you're purchasing for an entire program, that is a major difference in your bottom line. Additionally, the spices, those obviously are going to be continually used, and you need to check those over time. So you want to make sure that you're accommodating for that, as well as a lot of disposable paper products go through, as we are doing a lot of hands-on, a lot of sampling, and just that community feel that we've structured in this program. So next up, the pros and cons.
So just thinking about some of these things that we've talked about, I think you're aware that, we use quite a bit of equipment, and so we've invested a lot of money over time, and yet I don't think that was essential to start out, and we didn't start out with all that we have now, but it does require a fair bit of equipment. It requires instructors that have a different knowledge or expertise that when we put it all together really has helped meet the needs. And I think that's where our partnership with Surine and I and then with Sean has really made for a great team. On the cleanup aspect, we are generating dirty dishes and things all throughout the program. And that's one thing I would mention. At our pilot, we didn't have anybody to help with that. Fortunately, we had a colleague, an FCS educator in Idaho that was attending the program as a participant, who really stepped up, and she did a lot of dishes that day. But now we utilize some of Surine's Master Food Safety Advisor volunteers who have come and really been helpful in that cleanup aspect as the program goes along. And then definitely one of the pros is that we have been able to broaden the demographic, as Surine mentioned early on, that we're able to, to reach folks that for example, I don't normally reach as a whole, and Surine the same way. And so we've been able to broaden that demographic. Additionally, at least for me, I work more with traditional livestock producers, and so I don't reach out to too many other people in what we call the Treasure Valley, this valley of Idaho that includes Boise and some of the other big towns. Those aren't folks that usually would come to a program of mine, and so we've been able to reach a different audience than I traditionally would. And then just, that opportunity we've had to partner with other people, and like we've mentioned, Sean's been a great partner for us in the program.
And a great opportunity for us. We are in the same office, and unless it's 4-H related, rarely partner on our programming. And so it's a great opportunity for us to expand that capability. So what are those program stats, right? We spent this time talking to you about how we have structured our smoking and grilling, how we first piloted it is very different from how we implement it today. But to date, we have had 4 participant programs offered. So the pilot, as well as 3 separate 2-evening workshops. And we've implemented all of these in Owyhee County. And I really want to highlight that because we are a rural county, we're a rural location, and we have, as Scott just mentioned, brought a lot of individuals from our Treasure Valley region, so from more urban locations into our rural counties. So some people have driven an hour to come out to our program. So, they live in this big urban community and they're coming out to Owyhee County because they really want access to this program. Their neighbor took it and told them about it, and they just had to come. So we're definitely bringing in some clientele from outside of our county, but definitely hitting clientele in our county as well. We've even had a county commissioner attend our program with his wife. So he got that discount for the 2-4 deal. Then we have had 85 participants in these 4 separate programs. And as we look at our evaluations, we've had 76 evaluations, so almost a 90% completion rate. So we're pretty happy with that. And I think it lends back to understanding that we really sell this program as we're wanting to teach them, but we're passionate about them. We want to ignite that passion for this programming in them as well. And we're going to each just share a quick stat regarding our specific area. So one question that I ask in our post-program evaluation, so this is during night 2, they've come to both workshops. As a result of your participation in this smoking, grilling, foods workshop, how frequently do you plan to use a thermometer when smoking and or grilling meats? And so prior to attending the workshop, participants share that only 28% almost always used, before the workshop, 36% almost always used a thermometer, 23% always. So only 23% of our participants prior to coming, not even a fourth of that class, says, yep, I always use a thermometer for that internal temperature check. Following the class, we have 64% stating that they are always planning to use the thermometer. So almost 3 times individuals saying always, and then a high rate of individuals saying almost always.
And then one of the questions that we ask is related to what's their understanding of meat cuts and selection. And when we look at how that's been answered on the Likert type scale, they've gone from a 2.6 self-rating to a 4.1, and so pretty good increase in understanding and where meat cuts and come from and kind of what should be involved in selecting those.
And so in this photo, you're seeing a spread, if you will, but these are different foods from night 1. So we have some snack mix that's smoked, some cheeses that are smoked, and even a cheesecake. So we understand that we have increased our costs, but again, we also feel that we are providing a program that matches that fee. A big thing that we've found is that a lot of our participants, as we've marketed to get that, get that deal to get people in the door, a lot of individuals are coming, it's mates. So a wife and a husband are coming and they're treating it as a date night. We have found quite a few, or a buddy's night out is what we have found. And so with that, we really think that we are putting that quality program together with the different foods that we're providing. We do want to mention that in June of this year, so in 2021, we offered a Train the Trainer. This was in thanks to funding from the National Extension Association of Family and Consumer Sciences Endowment. We actually received funding to do a Train the Trainer in Idaho. And so in June, we had colleagues as well as volunteers from across Idaho attend the Train the Trainer. And since then, we actually have one participant just implemented a youth program, and he did partner with a local barbecue company in his region. And then we also have another participant who has an adult program scheduled for September of 2021, again, pursuing a partnership with a local barbecue company. And so as you see the photos on these are a photo credit to Brad Stokes. He's a cropping systems extension educator with University of Idaho Extension. And so he's located in a neighboring county, not smoking and grilling emphasis, but he just on Friday implemented this program with youth participants. He did partner with a local credit union. They funded the meat product for and the spices for the program. He partnered with a local barbecue company, Savory Lane, who did the cooking, brought the equipment. And so we really do feel that this is a way that you can really be enhancing some community partnerships, building those opportunities to have some awareness in the community. But while we have only offered it to adults, we are currently structuring a youth program. And we foresee that this could be some great partnerships with ag programs in the schools, family and consumer sciences programs, if you have them, after school programs, or even in-class opportunities. So it doesn't just have to be that adult participant, which is why we are trying to shift some of our content. With that, as we are winding down today's presentation, we want to encourage you to complete an evaluation. You all know we love those evaluations, but they are very crucial for that capability to gauge, what is working, what could be better. We encourage you to complete the evaluation, and want to let you know that if you do so, you have access to our marketing flyer, agendas, our PowerPoints for both evenings, handouts that we have developed for the program, some sample recipes in that. We even have an IRB, so for Idaho, approved a post-program evaluation, and something that came out of our Train the Trainer was an inventory checklist. What are all the things you have and what could get me started? But we encourage you to complete that evaluation. And with that, we would love to open it up for questions, although I am going to share our contact information. So if following today's presentation you want to reach out, we would highly encourage you to contact us.
Well, thank you very much, Scott and Surine. If you have a question, you can certainly unmute yourself and ask it aloud, or put your question in the chat. And we do have one to start with from Katrina. How are you handling the tasting and sharing in light of COVID regulations?
So, yep, that looks a bit different than that pilot program where everyone's just all over each other. But it's a little difficult to see, but we definitely set up our space to be, that's also another reason that under COVID or even in regular circumstances, we shied away from using our conference room anymore, just because it's not conducive. But we also really want to be mindful of our current situation. And so we have started using a community facility. We pay a rental fee for that. But with that facility, we're 1/10 of the capacity. And that way we are able to structure more space. Even at the grill, we're encouraging more space. It's occurring outside, but we're very mindful of those, and we are still able to meet the requirements, not only from CDC, but even our own institution.
Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask them aloud. Surine and Scott, this has been very interesting.
I have a question. This is Ken Hart from Idaho. Good job, you guys. Quick comment and a question. No. Last week I grilled 200 burgers at camp on a 3-burner home barbecue. Talk about the importance of equipment. The whole thing was on fire 90% of the time. It was crazy. But anyway, my question is, have you considered or thought about adding vegetables to the, because I am more incompetent on vegetables, it feels like, than meats, and I wondered about that. Thanks.
So with that, great question, Ken. Thanks for joining us today. And yes, we've included some recipes in the past and discussed them briefly, but not really focused on them as far as the hands-on component or sampling component. You know, the livestock guy, he just really fights me on that. But that's actually something, as we're structuring our youth program, we're trying to be really mindful of the My Plate model, trying to really encourage all food groups. And so that's something that it's not heavily in our adult program, but it definitely lacks there. And I think it is, as you mentioned, people want to know, how do I make, you know, if I'm going to be grilling onion or, you know, vegetables with my meats, how do I do that? And so that's something that as we're developing our youth program and trying to see how can we make sure we're encouraging the whole My Plate, I think that that's something that's also going to adapt our adult program down the line as well. So maybe going back to the kebabs, which isn't something that we've really focused on. But yes, I think it's a great point, and we get that a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, this is Nellie from OSU, Oregon State University. We do this smoking workshop every year until COVID hit, and it packs. And you know, you were saying you were worried about charging. We lost all our funding, county funding, a couple years ago, and so if we had our program going, it had to be cost. We had to cover everything from the lights to the rent for the office and everything. So we increased our prices, and people flocked to our classes because they said if you didn't charge anything, it wasn't worth it. And we always include, my master food preservers do this, and we do it fairly low cost. The meat is our biggest thing, but you'd be surprised how many volunteers have barbecues of all kinds. So they bring them. We usually do it at a church, so we have the outside gravel parking lot, and they bring all these barbecues in and talk about them, and people love that aspect of it. And then we always serve a meal with it. So as you said, a date night, we do it with our international cooking. They actually do hands-on cooking, and we fill all our classes. It's not a problem at all. And the more you charge, the better they like it, it seems like. So $50 is not much for a class like this. So I just want to encourage you to go ahead and charge, because people will come out. Because you go to a restaurant for a meal, you've got $50.
Give me more ammunition to get Surine to loosen up.
Nellie, you're throwing me under the bus here, but yes, I would have to say that yes, we definitely, just as you've stated, Nellie, you're bringing up some great points that people think if it doesn't cost anything, it's not worth anything. And unfortunately, this program has been a great example of that, especially as I mentioned, we've had a couple participants that came to the pilot and they came right back for the higher cost program. And I appreciate you bringing up volunteers with your master food preservers. We have had master food safety advisors, or there are a couple programs in our region, and both groups we've gone in and presented to one group just this spring, just a month or two ago. And then our other volunteer program is wanting us to bring it in. There's a lot of interest, I would agree. Thanks for sharing, Nellie. Even though now Scott's going to bring up that cost to me.
Any final questions before we wrap up today? And just a reminder, please complete the evaluation. The link is in the chat.
We would greatly appreciate that, everyone.
All right, well, hearing no further questions, I want to thank Surine and Scott for today's presentation. It was enjoyed by all of us. And if you will look at future webinars on our ESP website, we do have 2 more. Our next one will be the end of August, August 31st at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and the topic is impacting food insecurity, extensions grow and give modern Victorian garden work. So please join us for the webinar in August and September, and the recording of this webinar will be available on our ESP website within the next week. So thank you again for joining us. Thank you, Surine and Scott, for your excellent presentation. I hope everyone has a wonderful day and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.